Welcome to another exciting edition to GroveCityHockey Presents
Hockey in our neck of the woods, and you, sir, were a very talked about person towards the end.
I'm a fifth-year senior, kind of. Well, it's my sixth year of college. Incredible.
Hey guys, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cut Shield, for bringing you this episode. Make sure you check them out on the link below and use the promo code for 25% off your order. Used by all 32 NHL teams and players, Cut Shield is the premier protective player clothing designed by players for players. Their innovative cut-resistant clothing has prevented serious injury to numerous players, including over 30 NHL players. Cut Shield gives you the peace of mind to go out and play without worrying about injury. Use our promo code GroveCityHockey, all lowercase and no space, for an additional 25% off your order today. Welcome to GCH Podcast. I'm your host, Ben W. Stock. With me is my line mate, Chris the Man Greco, and also joining us is a very special guest, the Director of Business from Athelete Intelligence. We are going to be learning something new about head injuries, how we can help try to prevent them, what we can do to monitor them, and kind of go from there. Andrew Golden, thank you so much for taking the time to share some knowledge about head traumas, essentially, and let's see how this episode goes. This is going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to share more about what we're doing at Athelete Intelligence to help combat this head injury crisis and problem that we see in some of these contact sports.
Yeah, it's insane because and when you guys hear of head trauma in sports, most of us probably think of football. Hockey is definitely one of a high collision sport. But another one that it was kind of surprising to me when I was doing some research was that out of all of the sports, soccer was actually the number one sport with the most head trauma.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because it also has like the most participants, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is plays a factor in it, but yeah, I mean it certainly is, and I think you've started to see some rule changes for younger levels where they outlaw heading the ball, and so
those are always cool rules.
And teaching how to do it properly, right? Because those balls are coming fast, and if you're not doing things the right way, you're putting yourself at risk. And so
those things are heavy too.
Yeah,
they're very heavy soccer balls. My nephew had one. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
I could barely kick it. I'm like,
we're not allowed to play dodgeball with our face anymore.
Right? Exactly.
I remember. So like my wife, my girlfriend at the time, but she's my wife now. She was coaching U8. And my son was 3, so just a couple years ago. And he would come to practice, and like they would do the scrimmaging, everything like that. And across the board, they were telling her, no headers, no headers, no headers. And I was like, why? And because heading the ball was the number one cause of concussions and traumatic brain injuries in the game of soccer. Not necessarily the collision aspect of it, but and once I started reading more into it, I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And then the older you get, the more more power you have behind the shots and everything like that tends to attribute that. The other thing I thought was interesting too was that most collision aspects of it comes from, in football, is from players not keeping their head up. They essentially close their eyes, put their head down, and embrace for impact. And then when they do that, their spinal column is
Mm.
aligned in the wrong way, which then attributes to a lot of spinal injuries as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Damn.
We see that a lot. Whether it's running with the ball with your head down or going in for a tackle with your head down.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you still see that at the NFL level where these players have a tendency to lead with their head. When we sometimes work with hockey teams at a young age, we see a lot of kids that are still kind of learning to skate. So what do? They skate with their heads down. They're watching their feet, right? And so it happens. And the best part about a system like ours is we can see those patterns, we can see those trends, and now we can go in and fix it.
Yeah. Chris laughed because he still skates with his head down.
I was like, damn, I'm still teaching kids. I need to be taught, man.
All these years later.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you see and you already hit the nail on the head. There's that in the hockey aspect of it, is you see a lot of kids skating with their heads down. They get tripped up going into the boards, 3-4 feet away from actual contact with the boards. They don't know what to do with their positioning because they're still young. And coaching, it's kind of hard to teach. Hey, what's the proper technique to going into the boards when you're just fighting instinct at that point? And
you look at similar to football, right? Like every coach today is teaching their players to block or tackle with their head up, right? I mean, remove the head from contact. That theme is critical because if we can remove the head from contact, we're going to significantly lower the risk of head, neck, or spinal related injuries. The problem is there is this gap between what coaches teach their players to do and how those players are performing on the field. And that might even change during practice while running certain drills versus winning a game. And that same thing is similar with hockey, right? They say, hey, no checking at certain levels, but I mean, you're on ice and sometimes it's hard to stop and there's going to be hits and things are going to happen. And so what's the best thing that we can have? Information, insights, an understanding. It's critical.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that your company is trying to do is provide that information so that you guys can help coaches, teach the way, the correct way to do things in life. Especially with playing a sport such as hockey, football, lacrosse, any other high contact sports. What are some of the products that you guys are developing or that we are able to use to kind of help collect that data, so to speak, so that way we can help and learn and evolve and how to become much more aware of our surroundings as athletes and as coaches?
Yeah, so we have two different form factors of wearable devices, three different products. So we have one that's in the mouth guard form factor. That mouth guard, collects, processes, and transmits any impact data instantly to the sideline or to the benches and in hockey and whatnot. The other form factor is a helmet affixed sensor. So it goes up inside of a lacrosse helmet, football helmet, hockey helmet. We have two different versions of that. One is a Bluetooth enabled version where all of that impact data is going to be stored and then you can download it following your session. And then like the mouth guard, we have a real-time version of it where that data is being collected, processed, and transmitted instantly. All of our products are focused on collecting three main data points. We're focused on looking at where on the head are these head impacts occurring. More specifically, when we're providing reports to a team, we focus on, hey, here are the top 5 players with the most amount of crown of head hits, right? Players that are dropping their head. We're looking at impact counts or the workload, right? How many hits to the head are your players taking? And then we can also collect the approximate G-force, so how hard of a hit. And one of the things that teams really like about our real-time solutions is they can actually set thresholds. They can say, hey, anytime a player on my team takes a 40G or 45G impact, I want to be notified. And when an impact at that specific threshold is met or exceeded, they instantly get an alert on their smartwatch or on their smartphone that tells them, the player jersey number and the severity of the impact. And so what we're doing is we're creating an extra set of eyes and ears from people, right? Sometimes things are happening away from the puck or happening away from the ball. Now we can see those things, right? Sometimes things might not look as bad as they actually are. And so we can, be a resource. In fact, I've talked to a number of, hockey players in the past where it wasn't when they got checked, it was when they got checked, hit the boards, and then fell and hit their heads on the ice, right? Now we can see those things, and we can intervene when necessary. And our whole goal around collecting of the data or having this real-time information is to empower coaches or empower, the athletic training staff to make more informed decisions or have more information when they decide, to potentially pull a player or, have further evaluation for their players.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because one of the things that I've noticed too is that, you said one was the top of the crown. Side impact has got to be another big factor, and the other thing that I would think too is the blow to the back of the head, because that's one of the spots that can put you out before you even not even realize it. Especially those hits that you don't even see coming from behind, or as you say, they slip. A skate comes out from underneath them, and then next thing you know, their head's hitting the back of the back of their bucket's hitting the ice or the floor. In our case, because we do roller hockey, and that's a pretty hard surface to be hitting.
Our core is in like the team data analytics. Like we're really, really good at developing like wearable technology, but it's not about the sensor. It's about what do you do with the data. Right. And so we've been really, really good at taking this complex information and turn it into what we call coachable moments. And a lot of our analytics are designed around, team reporting, right? So looking at team trends, team patterns, team baselines, and more importantly, highlighting the outliers, right? The kids that are performing above the norm. We then take it a step further where we have, these athlete detail pages. You can look at a specific drill, a specific time period, a specific day of data, and we heat map every single impact that player has sustained on a 3D modeling of their head, right? So you're not just getting kind of numbers and analytics, you're getting a visualization of what is this player doing, where are they taking the most amount of head impacts. And what we've seen is when coaches have that information, they get empowered, they get excited because once again, they get to do what they do best, and that's coach them.
Yeah, I think that's
an amazing product.
Yeah, it's something that I think any team out there with its salt is definitely looking at ways to prevent head injuries. Concussions is on the rise, especially with the CTE. I know I put an email out to Christopher Nowitzki with his CTE foundation months ago. Still haven't heard back yet. So, Chris, if you ever watch this, hit me up.
Come on,
Unlikely. He's a former Harvard man. One of my relatives actually teaches at Harvard, so maybe I'll just reach out to James and say, hey, give me Chris's actual contact info. And because I always joke, I always joke with wherever I end up working at, I go, I could have gone to Harvard, and instead of
okay, man, relax.
But in reality, it's always a joke, because I never had the grades for it, but It's all about who you know.
The concussion legacy foundation, I mean, I think they were part of one of the largest CTE studies that I believe the paper was actually released December of last year. But it was really interesting because what they found was it wasn't so much as the number of concussions that a player had sustained, which determined or aligned with the severity of CTE that they may develop in the future. It actually came back to the quantity of head impacts. And so if that doesn't create more of a need to just be more aware of what workloads our players are having or how to eliminate unnecessary head contact, that right there creates probably one of the biggest cases for why head impact monitoring technology is just so critical. And just what I always tell people is you can't manage what you don't measure, right? So if you want to reduce head contact, you got to know where you're going to be reducing it from. Where is it at?
Where's it at?
Who are my harder or higher workload players, and how do we is it because we got a kid playing both sides of the ball and we gotta pull back a little bit? I mean, we're talking about a pretty critical injury here, so I think it's important to look at ways to reduce head contact.
So do you actually come across cases, or you just get the numbers and send them to a lab? It's like, like X person had this bad of an injury, so you guys kind of like monitored, try to like go around that kind of thing.
All of the data that we're collecting, we're basically, our system is creating these reports for teams. So it's not that we're getting this data and then building reports and then sending them to teams. We've built an analytics dashboard where they can go in and look at these top 5 reports. And we make it really, really simple because you got to remember we work with youth programs, which have volunteer coaches, right?
Yeah,
so it has to be as simple as, hey, here are your top 5 players with the most amount of crown of head impacts, or here are the top 5 kids who took the hardest hits, and here's how hard those hits were. And so we do have an online dashboard which coaches can log into and look at more robust and detailed analytics. But then we also have a automated emailed reporting system where they don't even need to go in there. They could just get an email directly to their inbox that summarizes all of that session data, so they can look at it and say, hey, did we have anything of concern in today's practice? Nope. Okay, go on to the next day. Or, hey, Johnny took twice as many crown of head impacts. He's our offensive lineman. I'm going to go talk to the offensive line coach for tomorrow and have him run Johnny through specific drills where he's getting his head up, he's getting his hands up. And in fact, that's a very, very common thing that we see. And there are so many cases where we'll see upwards of 30% decrease in head contact, throughout a week or throughout a season of practice, because they now have the information of where things are at and who's driving those numbers. And then they can work with those players and bring those numbers down. So,
wow, that is a great program you guys have over there.
Yeah.
Little kids, but still, I'm glad it got made.
Yeah, and I think the reason why it's successful is because we built this company on 3 main pillars. Which, number one is you have to create a system that's easy to use, and so we really focused on this youth market, which is also like the large. There's also aspects of that market that are decreasing. And so we knew that if we can build a system that volunteer coaches could use, could embrace, could see value in, it would be that much easier for high school teams or college teams who have a little bit more of a staff to be able to, use those tools. Okay. The second pillar is you make it cost effective. And so, we operate off of a subscription model where people aren't buying sensors or, buying these charging boards that we provide. That's not what's important. What's important is the data analytics. And so, we offer multi-year contracts and incentivize people to add athletes. And, that drives the per athlete, per year cost down pretty low. So, it's very attainable for programs to either roll into their registration or to fundraise or, get sponsors to fund it. It's head health safety. People want to get behind it. And then the third pillar is, you got to answer the question of, well, what the heck do I do with the data? And that's what we specialize in, right? That's the meat of our product is, helping people see where their opportunities are, where their coachable moments are, where they can go in and work with a specific position group or a specific athlete to retrain and correct bad habits. So, they can do things the right way. They can do things better. And the byproduct of that is safety.
Is there like one sport that's a little harder than the other? Would you say like football practices or hockey practices kind of harder to get a switch around than another one?
What do you mean by like what is harder or switch around?
Like, is it more like difficult, like one sport more difficult than the other to try to help improve the situations? Because like football, for an example, there's way more hitting in practice than in hockey. Hockey, like when I was playing growing up, you do like a few hitting drills here and there, maybe like out of an hour, you get like 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the day, of physical drills, and like we get away from it.
Yeah, so I would say obviously football is like our core sport. It's probably what we're most successful in. From there, I would probably say lacrosse. Mostly men's lacrosse. We've worked with some women's lacrosse teams, and then probably hockey. And from there, we've got some innovations that are helping us with women's soccer. We talked about women's soccer a little bit earlier, and we've worked with some men's and women's soccer teams, but we've got some new innovations to really help us there. But what's been great for us is because we're a subscription model, and if you're using the helmet sensor, which 90% of our teams are using, they're able to use it for football in the fall and then move those same sensors to like hockey in the winter or lacrosse in the spring.
That's convenient.
And they're amortizing that subscription cost across multiple sports and multiple athletes. We don't charge them to, for each sport or, if they're sharing that sensor in a new season. And so I think teams really see that as valuable.
Yeah. God bless you.
With the mouth guard, you can't really share it, which I have been asked so many times if anyone's ever done. And the reason why we get that question, though, it's actually a really interesting reason. It's because our mouth guards are really unique in the material that we use. We use a material called Vistamax, which is what a lot of dentists use when they're developing bite guards. So this material is very durable. And in fact, you can reboil and refit it multiple times, right? And so when they hear that, they're like, oh, like I could, share it. Athletes
give
can
it to Jimmy after I'm done.
Well, exactly. Well, I think
the concept behind that is that if you start out with a kid that is 10, 11 or 12, then they can reform it each year to change to go with their actual mouth size,
or if they have braces and then get their braces taken off. So but I was surprised at how often I would get that question. My follow-up question is, would you ever share your toothbrush with someone? And they're like, all right, that makes sense.
I'm baffled that was a actual question that you get asked often.
Yeah.
So so how much is a subscription cost? Where can we get your product? And the like of that, as well.
Yeah, so our subscriptions are really based on the product of choice. So, mouth guard versus, one of our 2 helmet sensors. Once you determine that, then we offer 1, 2, and 3-year contracts. And then once we know how many players you want to outfit or how many teams you want to outfit, we're able to determine a per athlete and per year price. And so, it could be as low as $99 per athlete per year. And then, as high as however big your team, your organization, your league, your district is. So it's really built up from there.
Yeah, I actually think that's something that I mean, it's kind of difficult with roller hockey because roller hockey is really a non-contact sport. But you do have a lot of we do have a lot of ties in with youth hockey,
Sure.
Especially in Chris's area. He's in Detroit. He's got 4 or 5 rinks within 25 minutes of each other. I've got 2, 3 rinks right here within 10 minutes from me, or 5 minutes actually. With little ones, playing, and then of course, then you have as my favorite saying is the trust fund hockey players, which is AKA lacrosse, starting to be coming across. I don't know if you knew that, Chris. That that was a Jeopardy question a few months ago.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And but yeah, so I mean that's coming up. Rugby's also another high intensity sport that because they don't really wear.
Don't have a lot of head injuries though.
What's that?
They don't really have. Please tell me if I'm wrong, Andrew. Isn't like lacrosse like lower? Not lacrosse.
Rugby
is way more lower because they don't wear any helmets. It's like now they know not to hit like an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, but those are big boys, man. And in fact, World Rugby and Rugby Union have kind of been at the forefront of using smart mouth guards in play and in practice, and even mandating them in many cases. And so, it's the same thing where it's like, hey, if we take the pads away, people won't use their heads, but it's still going to happen, right? I mean, there's certain things that you just can't control. So in the event that something does happen, they can now be aware and intervene when necessary.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, it's not actual head contact with something else, or the head contact with during a tackle. It's the knees coming up. Right. As they're going down, they're hitting the legs, they're hitting the thighs, and I don't know if you've ever seen a rugby player's thighs, but there's some massive.
Those are big boys. Yeah,
those are big boys. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the All Blacks from New Zealand or the Springboks from South Africa. Those boys are insanely huge.
Yeah. It's a wild sport. We actually worked with a group out of New Jersey called the A7FL, which is a non-helmeted, non-padded football league, full contact. That's awesome. And again, the idea is that like you remove the pads, you remove the helmets. Are you removing the weapons? Right. And so it was really kind of cool to see how it really boils down to technique, right? And that's what every, you look at this shoulder-led, heads-up style tackling. I mean, that all evolved from rugby. The theme of it is spot on, right? Eliminate the head from contact. But there's still head contact. It's still happening. And that's the nature of the sport. So what do we need to do? We need to be more aware of that and fix it when we see it. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to solve.
Well, I think it's imperative that we as a sports society start paying attention to that more. I think what you and your company are doing is an amazing opportunity to get the word out there. Because, like you said, if you don't have the data, you can't correct anything, you can't fix anything, you can't solve anything, and then essentially you're just part of the problem. Without that information. Now that you're getting that information, you can be proactive in changing those things that are that could be detrimental to a youth player, and maybe even preventing future mental health crises that our world is facing today. So with
Yep.
not necessarily unnecessary, because accidents happen, but you're monitoring something that should be monitored very closely. Because I think it was on your website. I know it was on your website. I just can't remember the signs of a concussion. And there was like 15 to 20 different things to be looking out for. And those
concussions are a confusing injury,
Right.
It's just it's a cognitive injury, right? And that's why it's so challenging to create a technology that tracks cognitive changes, right? I mean, it's dizziness, it's headache, it's vision, and I mean there's so many different things. And so the most important thing that programs can do is educate themselves, right? Not just the coaches, but the players too, because there's a lot of times where players don't know the signs and symptoms of a concussion, or there's been studies done where upwards of 60% of athletes have admitted to hiding symptoms in order to continue participation in the sport.
I'd
And
probably do that.
Understanding and
I was one of them.
educating. So understanding and educating yourselves in the signs and symptoms is an easy step that I think every program should do. We're also really, really big proponents of athletic trainers, and just the athletic training community and everything that they do for players and student athletes. And and then when you have that foundation of education, proper training, and then the athletic training, I would say that next step is, okay, let's start looking at this data. How are we doing? What do our practices look like? How does that compare to our games? Are there specific players or position groups? Are we working them too hard as we're leading up to game time? So the data is designed to present opportunity, to present what's happening, so then the coaches can go in and make those necessary changes. And we have so many stories of teams being like, I had no idea we were hitting so hard during this specific change a drill or remove a drill. And so we're going to validate one of two things with data. The first is like, hey, guess what, guys? You have zero or a very low amount of head contact. You're doing everything great. And that's, if that ever becomes the case, I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where you'll have zero head impacts, but let's say that does become the case. That's a positive story to have, to show that, hey guys, that's validation that we're doing things the right way. The other things that we're going to validate is that, hey, coach, you've got a couple of players or position groups that are performing above your team averages, and need some adjustment and some help, and now they can go in and fix those. And it's just been really, really cool to see how programs have adopted this technology and adopted the reports, because as I said, one of the first, your top 5 players. Hey, top 5 kids with the most amount of crown of head impacts. Top 5 players that have had the most amount of hits. And what we're finding a lot of programs doing is kind of instilling these goals, right? Hey guys, let's never have the same player in a top 5 report more than once. And now that they have the data and they can track it, they can hit those goals. And they can
Nice.
show parents or show the players. And we've heard certain stories where players that maybe had challenges earlier in the season are now coming to coaches and saying, hey, my data is going to be a lot better today. And why is that? Because they've been able to create new habits, better habits, safer habits, and they're now understanding the importance of that. And that's key, man. That's so important.
What you aim for?
What's that?
Yeah, that's what you aim for.
It's what you aim for, exactly.
That's what you aim for, man. Just positive progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coachable moments, yeah.
Yep. and I think it's awesome because you're like I said, we're just bringing awareness to the situation, correcting the behavior, and making the sport safer all around for not only the participants but for future generations as well.
Yeah. I don't, I'm kind of on the side of, I don't want to see football turn into flag football, right?
Please no.
Right. I don't want to change the way that sports are being played. And so, how do we just become more aware of what's happening, right? A lot of these rule changes, have been put in place. Yeah. It's been really interesting. There was a huge debate in NC2A football about reducing the amount of spring contact practices, reducing practices, or limiting the amount of contact practices to a less quantity. And so what are the reverse effects of that? Well, if you have less time, are you now going to be putting kids in more contact practices because you have less time to do it? So how do we squeeze more in less time? It was really interesting because South Carolina University is one of the football teams that we work with, and their athletic training staff is, it's not about, eliminating the amount of contact practices that we can do. It's about making sure our kids have good habits, right? It's about that practice. It's about those reps and doing things the right way. And so those same studies that showed the rise in concussions, was a byproduct of the highest head contact workloads. Well, it's not, eliminate practice, it's reduce head contact workloads. And, how do you do that? Well, we look at what players are driving it, right? We look at the exact things that are aligned with it. Is it drills? Is it practices? Is it players? What is it exactly? And then let's go in and fix that.
I agree. I think that's it's incredible platform that you guys have built, and I'm looking forward to seeing the more data being collected. I'm looking forward to seeing as you guys start to expand in your role in the sports industry, which sports are safer than others, not necessarily in a negative way, but just in an overall general head trauma prevention aspect of it. And just like I said, data collection is what you guys are working towards, so that way the coaches can do what they do best, which is coach, and the players can do what they do best, which is play the sport to the best of their ability.
Yep.
So
to a T.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I'm Ben W. Stock. My line mate, Chris, the man Greco. Thank you so much to Athlete Intelligence, Andrew Golden, sorry. And I appreciate you so much for coming on, talking to us about this, and really helping us really see what your product can do for those that would like to get in contact with you. What is your, I believe it's athleteintelligence.com, correct?
Yep. Athleteintelligence.com is where we have a lot of, just information on what we do and how we do it. We're very active on social media. So, your Twitter, your Instagram or X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Anyone can email us as well at info@athleteintelligence.com. And, I think one of the best things about this is that, we want to be educators, right? Like 90% of the people that I talk to are not familiar with this idea of head impact monitoring or what it's capable of providing, let alone have ever heard of athlete intelligence. And so it's a great way for us to have a discussion and talk about what we do and, see if we can help teams out. And at the end of the day, that's what our goal is.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. Love what you guys are doing over there, man. I hope everything just skyrockets to the moon.
Yeah,
you guys keep going.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Saving the youth one body at a time, one short person at a time.
Exactly. Yep.
No, I'd love to have you back on and talk more about it, though.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Learned a lot. Like you said, a lot of people don't know, man. You think it's common sense, and you start thinking about it, you're like, damn, bro, like, my coach would have monitored our practices. Like, we'd probably be a little smarter by now. But,
it's been really interesting too, because because it's almost been 10 years that I've been with this company. I've been able to see this change in like coaching style and generations, right? You're getting a lot more of these younger coaches who have grown up with technology, who are comfortable with technology, who embrace technology and innovation. And so we're definitely seeing these sports evolve, and it's only gonna continue to grow.
Yep, and you're seeing less coaches saying rub some dirt on it, get back out there.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I get every time I meet with so many ex-professional athletes, and one of the things that they always say to me is, man, I wish I had this when I played.
I really did.
Hopefully we can help that next generation.
Well, like I said,
I think you're doing well with it. I think you got it.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks. Yep. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm Ben W. Stock with Chris the Man Greco and Andrew Golden. I got it right this time. I don't know why I thought I threw an R in there. Maybe I was thinking about Chef Gordon Ramsay from earlier today.
Andrew, I don't really bring him out much.
Athlete Intelligence. If you're interested in this product, I highly recommend it. It's something that's going to help your program, your youth program, your travel program, your elite programs out, trying to identify those head issues, especially with those contact areas. This is something that you should take very, very seriously, and I hope you do. And if you do, give the guys at Athlete Intelligence a chance to show you guys what kind of information that they can provide for you guys to improve your gameplay, so that you guys can play hard, play smart, play fast.
Yep.
That's going to do it for this episode of GCH Podcast. I'm your host, Ben W. Stock, alongside Chris Greco. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe on all our platforms on YouTube and on Spotify. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Cheers.